At my promotion party, my wife betrayed me, so I made her regret everything. The room spun around me as if caught in an unseen cyclone, each laugh a cutting wind that battered at the frail structure of my heart. My mind raced, desperately conjuring memories of the nights when Lily and I reveled in each other's company, when her laughter came alive, not as a tool for derision, but as a melody I couldn't get enough of. But that echo felt distant now, washed away by the tide of her sardonic words. Biggest loser. I forced a smile, attempting a normalcy that felt foreign and heavy. David, the accomplished husband, David, the beloved, David, so paradoxically reduced to a punchline in what was meant to be a night of triumph. As the party continued around me, I stood frozen, a mere spectator to my own life. The bubbling voices of colleagues turned into whispers of doubt. The warmth from friends felt like a cruel contrast to the chill that enveloped me. Lily stood at the bar, her laughter mingling with Richard's, that too familiar colleague of hers. I hadn't paid much mind to him before, but now I observed his fingers grazing her arm, the ghost of intimacy I longed for, now relegated to someone else's grasp. As she threw back her head and laughed, her beauty illuminated by the soft golden glow of the chandelier, anger curled in my gut. I should have been the one to make her laugh like that. Should have been able to bask in her affection, but this moment, the moment of her betrayal, had stripped that from me. Just then she caught my gaze and her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a crack in the facade that escaped my notice. There it was, a flicker of uncertainty dancing across her features, as if she was trying to read the swirling storm brewing behind my calm exterior. My heart pounded irrationally in response, a battle of emotions raging within: betrayal, hurt, anger. It was as if I were walking a tightrope suspended over a chasm of despair, with each swing threatening to pull me down into the depths of my fears. "David, come join us," Richard called out, overly cheerful as if he sensed the unrest creeping into the atmosphere. I forced my feet to move, propelled forward by a mix of dread and resignation. The crowd welcomed me back, their conversations flowing like champagne, but I felt caught in a cycle of despair, lost amid the laughter that now sounded hollow. I took a breath, filling my lungs with the scent of expensive cologne and the faintest hint of Lily's perfume. It was a heady mixture that once brought me comfort but now only intensified the ache in my heart. "Celebrating another big win tonight?" Richard said, his voice teasing yet warm. My eyes drifted to Lily, where the mischief in her expression lingered, a wolf in the sheep's clothing of celebration. The urge to shout out my suspicions clawed at me, a primal need to expose the fractures in our marriage. But even as Richard offered me a drink, as though further steeping me in the fabric of denial, I clutched my glass tight, the ice clinking in a mocking symphony as I fought to keep my emotions from spilling forth. "Yeah, just enjoying the moment," I forced out, my voice strained but barely masking the storm within. And just like that, the moment passed. Other conversations flitted around me like errant butterflies, completely unaware of the tempest brewing just beneath the surface. I observed, detached, as if I were a fly on the wall of my own life, wanting to intervene but feeling the overwhelming nature of my doubts keep me rooted in place. Bitterness seeped through me as I stood there, trapped, portraying someone who had delighted in triumph when a storm of betrayal shadowed every corner of the room. The evening dragged on, punctuated by glimmers of kindness from our friends, false warmth that felt more like ice as they prodded me with questions about the promotion, about the ambitious plans that lay ahead. My answers came in clipped sentences, devoid of the passion they deserved. I painted the picture of success, all the while feeling the thread unravel behind the canvas. The sharp clacking of heels against the hardwood floor pulled me from my thoughts. Lily was making her way through the crowd, a radiant beacon of charm, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on me, intense, lingering, and with a hint of mischief beneath the surface. "Honey, can you come help me with something in the back?" she purred, her voice silky yet pointed, threading through the party like a blade. A complex mix of emotions twisted in my chest. I exchanged glances with Richard, catching his concern. He saw it too, that unforeseen tension that hung between us. She beckoned me, and I felt a surge of dread take root. What did she want? To soothe over the insults? To pull me back into her world of pretense? Or did she want to brush off the mess under the rug of our lives? I followed her, drawn into the shadows of the hallway beyond the living room. The closer we got to the back of the house, the more the anticipation morphed into anxiety. Every step felt like a march towards my impending doom, a confrontation unavoidable as I stepped beyond the threshold of our once vibrant dreams, now darkened by the stain of betrayal. Then we were alone, The accolades and laughter muffled behind closed doors, and in that silence, I could finally hear the pounding of my heart echoing in my ears. The mask she wore evaporated as she leaned against the wall, arms crossed, her expression shifting from playful to a tempestuous storm. And in her eyes, I searched for the woman I once knew, searching for the flicker of genuine love that had sustained me in the quiet moments before the laughter drowned us. "David, can we talk?" she began, her voice now laced with an urgency that had me frozen in place. As the last of the party chatter faded behind us, the door clicked shut, sealing us in an echoing silence that coiled around my chest like a vice. My pulse drummed an erratic cadence as I braced myself for the conversation that loomed ahead. The air between us felt electric, charged with unspoken words and unshed tears that threatened to spill into the fragile space we had created. The woman I adored stood before me, transformed into an enigma, her beauty now juxtaposed against the shadows of our unraveling relationship. "Can we talk?" she asked again, her tone softer yet tainted with an underlying frost that contradicted the warmth I craved. The plea in her voice shattered my resolve, and I felt the weight of conflicting emotions tighten within me: love, betrayal, hurt. What was left to say? Did she not grasp the magnitude of the facade she had built so well? I blinked, searching her face for the sincerity I once saw in her eyes. Yet all I could discern was an intricate tapestry woven from shards of laughter and barbed words, each thread a reminder of how far we had drifted apart. "You mean talk, or defend yourself?" I bit out, surprising myself with the sharpness of my tone. The silence that stretched between us felt heavy, pregnant with tension, as Lily's expression flickered momentarily. Was it guilt, perhaps? "David, please." "I didn't come here to fight," she replied, running a hand through her hair, the gesture strikingly familiar yet disconcerting. She paused, searching for the right words while unease danced in her eyes. "I wanted to explain." "Explain what, exactly?" I interrupted, unable to dislodge the sting of her earlier comments from my thoughts. "The way you joked about me in front of everyone. Or how you can brush off our years together as easily as tossing away an old t-shirt." My voice was quiet but laced with anger, barely controlling the storm brewing inside me. "David, it was a joke." "I thought it was funny," she stammered, the laugh that had once lit up my world suddenly sounding hollow. Her defensiveness felt like a punch, robbing me of the breath I needed to respond. In that moment, all I could see was the woman who had always celebrated my victories turning my triumph into a twisted source of humiliation. "Funny," I echoed bitterly. "That was the punchline of my life tonight. Do you even hear how that sounds?" I stepped closer, letting the warmth of her presence become a reminder of the intimacy we had once shared, now tainted with a chilling discomfort that sent shivers down my spine. "Do you understand how I felt standing there, watching you laugh with someone else? Watching you turn my celebration into mockery?" For a brief moment, the skin across her brow creased in confusion, and I could almost see the wheels turning in her head. "I wasn't laughing at you, David. I was just trying to lighten the mood." "Please don't take it so seriously," she insisted, her bravado faltering under the weight of my words. But as the bravado slipped away, her careless dismissal further ignited the embers of anger in my chest. "Lighten the mood?" I echoed incredulously, waving a dismissive hand, as if trying to swat away the absurdity of her justifications. "There's lightening the mood, and then there's turning your husband into a punchline. I thought we were partners. I thought you wanted to build me up, not tear me down." My voice cracked slightly, betraying the fissures of betrayal that were slowly splintering through me. As the reality settled between us, I could see the shift happen in her eyes. Recognition, perhaps shame, seemed to glimmer faintly, a hint of remorse that pierced through the conditioning of denial. Yet beneath that flicker lay something deeper, a truth that neither of us wanted to dissect. Her face shifted, revealing the rawness she had concealed under layers of laughter and derision. "I never meant to hurt you, David," she murmured, each word laden with a quiet tremor that echoed my own emotions, wounded and heartbroken. I was feeling off, and sometimes it felt easier to make fun of the things I couldn't admit I was struggling with. "But I never thought you'd take it like that," she added hastily. "Then what are you really struggling with, Lily?" I pressed, testing the waters of her facade with trepidation. "Is it that your husband is doing well, and you feel threatened by it? Or is it something more?" Because that laughter, those barbs, felt like a mask for something rotten beneath the surface. The moment hung, thickening our silence as I struggled to reconcile the Lily I had loved with the woman standing before me now. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice trembling as though she were on the verge of collapsing into herself. I'm not who you think I am anymore." My heart twisted within me at the admission, the gravity of her words blurring the boundaries of compassion and betrayal. The intimacy we once shared seemed to slide between us like water slipping through fingers, powerless to grasp. I longed to reach out, to pull her back into a familiar embrace, but doubt held me captive, ensnared by the very ache that her presence now represented. "I need to know the truth," then I responded, my voice steady but low, struggling not to drown in the sorrow creeping into my heart. "What is happening with you and Richard?" Because I saw your connection, and it wasn't just friendly banter. It felt a closer. I was met with silence, an echoing void, and suddenly we were poised at the precipice of a revelation, teetering between the edges of honesty and despair. Her lips quivered, the fight leaving her eyes, as a myriad of emotions waged war within. Faced with the weight of our reality, I held my breath, a moment suspended in time that could lead us into salvation or deeper into the darkness of our disintegrating bond. The memories of laughter and easy affection washed over me like shadows, reminding me of everything I had once hoped for. The question lingered in the air, a frail whisper begging for resolution as I stared into her eyes, waiting, no longer willing to accept half-truths or convenient excuses. In the dimming light of the hallway, sheltered from the clamor of the party beyond, we stood on the edge, desperately grasping for clarity while the world outside continued moving. But for me, the temporal moment felt like a cliffside, where every step forward could either lead to redemption or plunge me further into the depths of desolation. And all I could do was hope that when the truth filled the void, it would somehow lead us back to each other, or provide the closure we both so desperately needed. The aftermath of the party left a bitter taste in my mouth, akin to biting into an overripe fruit that had once promised sweetness. Each day blurred into the next, steeped in whispers of regret and suspicion that crawled through our home like an unwelcome mist. The once hallowed halls, once filled with warmth and laughter, felt hauntingly cold. It was as if a palpable distance had wedged itself between us, a chasm that deepened with every minute I spent wondering where we had gone wrong. Lily's betrayal gnawed at my insides, festering like an unhealed wound, and I found myself yearning for a bridge to cross the ever-growing abyss. As weeks blended into agonizing silence, our exchanges shrank to ritualistic performances, small talk masked as normalcy. Each evening, I would muster up the fragile hope of reconnecting, yet I felt the weight of her emotional detachment, an unshakable presence that settled around my heart like a thick fog. The laughter that we had once shared, the simple intimacy of a knowing glance or a soft touch, had transformed into a myriad of hesitations. I watched as my world grew dull, a landscape of unspoken words and concealed resentments unfolding each night on the discolored walls we had painted together, a facade now inexplicably worn and cracked. Every corner of our home echoed memories that hung like ghosts in the air, taunting me. I would lay awake in our once cozy bed, the sheets cold and unwelcoming, unable to slip into dreams. My mind raced with thoughts, spiraling into a wild mix of accusations and ill-fated imaginings. What had she meant when she cut him down with laughter that night? Was Richard just a friendly face, or was there something darker lurking beneath those easy smiles? The cruel toast replayed in my mind, each repetition causing the jagged edges of my heart to cut deeper. The signs had been there, but I had chosen to turn a blind eye. A dismissive laugh, a text message with no legitimate explanation, a furtive glance towards Richard that lasted an instant too long, all while I deluded myself into believing it was just harmless fun. The dread clawed up my back, an insatiable fear feeding on my already frail spirit. I began to notice the subtle shifts in our life together, her phone always in hand, a lighted screen that became her new confidant while I was left wandering in the shadows, searching for remnants of the woman who had shared my dreams. That familiar rhythm of our life together felt out of tune, each day crashing into the next with discord. One fateful evening, propelled by a mix of desperation and dread, I stumbled upon the evidence that shattered whatever fragile semblance of trust remained. I had waited until the early hours, the chill of midnight creeping through the windows, making me feel as though I were in a different planet. Discovering her phone lit up on the kitchen counter, an innocuous sight, pulled me in like a moth drawn to a flame. My pulse quickened as I picked it up and began scrolling through text, the knot tightening in my stomach with each message that bled into view. Words intended for someone else, a reminder of laughter, warmth, and possibly something deeper with another man. My heart raced, the walls of the room closing in on me, the betrayal a jagged blade slicing through the air. "Baby, I still can't believe you were that close. One text read, accompanied by a flurry of laughing emojis. Each subsequent message became a gasp, a jagged inhale of disbelief, until I was nearly choking on the truth. The laugh echoed mockingly in my mind, so long created to uplift, now tearing me apart bit by bit. The nausea that began invading my stomach was suffocating. Lily had slipped through my fingers, and her betrayal felt like laced poison running through my veins. So this was what I had become, a voiceless bystander in a domestic tragedy that ominously played before my eyes. Furious tears began to well in the corners of my vision, blurring the digital evidence that bore witness to my broken heart. Rage intertwined with sorrow, shame melded with understanding that this wasn't some intruder at our doorstep but rather deceit lurking inside our shared lives. The weight of betrayal settled heavily on my chest, so overwhelming I felt invisible and fathomless. I dropped the phone as if it had turned into molten fire. My heart raced, a frenetic tempo beating through the very foundation of our home. I staggered back, desperately breathing in air laced with despair, feeling trapped in a cage of emotions I no longer understood. A quiet voice within me whispered that this was my moment, as if just one tiny flicker of power remained. Weeks spent wrestling with the echoes of betrayal had birthed a resolve I hadn't known existed. I deserved answers. My heart demanded confrontation, a dialogue, whatever it took to shatter the suffocating silence that clung to us like a second skin. I steeled my thoughts, knowing that the conversation we were set to have would redefine the course of our entangled lives. In the days that followed, every interaction felt charged with electric energy, simmering beneath the surface of polite exchanges. When she walked into the room, the silence became thick, unyielding, festering like an open wound. When I caught her gaze flickering nervously towards her phone, I sensed the beginning of our reckoning. It loomed in the air, heavy with inevitability, reminding me that I could either succumb to the shadows or step out into the light and demand the truth. David, Lily began one night as we both sat on opposite ends of the couch, the gap between us ever widening. Can we talk? It was a plea, a desperate invitation laden with denial. The tone had grown familiar, yet it awakened something fierce inside me. She turned to face me fully, and I could sense the walls that had grown around her heart, shielding her from the truth, but I had no intentions of being placated any longer. I came here to tell you about what happened, she continued, her voice quivering. I want to explain everything. Yet all I could think was, where was that spirit I had once admired? Growing bolder against her evasiveness, I seized the chance. What do you want to explain? The prank? The inside jokes? Or the distance you've placed between us? My voice trembled, anger crafted with heartbreak, desperate to puncture the bubble of pretense that protected her. For a moment, silence hung like a thick fog as her eyes searched mine for something. They flickered with confusion, perhaps even guilt, but it didn't matter. What mattered was breaking down the boundaries she placed around us, to cut through the uncertainty and fill the absence of intimacy with raw honesty. David, she started, but I cut her off, the anguish consuming me like fire. Each word had become a weapon fired into the heart of everything I had built. My love, my trust, my partnership. Just tell me. I deserve to know the truth. I barked, the rising tide of emotions boiling over, spilling into the chaos that had overtaken our lives. And as I awaited her response, my heart thudded painfully in my chest, teetering on the edge of a precipice that could either hurl us into the depths of despair or lift us into the promise of transforming our fractured existence into something stronger. The moment hung between us like a fragile breath on the edge of revelation, daring us both to challenge the nightmare of our reality, searching for honesty amidst the ruins. With a heavy heart and newfound determination, I plunged into a resolve that transformed my vulnerability into a relentless quest for truth. The gnawing suspicions that had taken root in my mind demanded affirmation, and I found myself mired in the nuances of deception. I reached out to a private investigator, a decision that felt simultaneously cowardly and empowering. Using a combination of gut instinct and clinical analysis, I prepared to peel back the layers of Lily's betrayal, each piece of evidence tightening around my heart like a noose. Weeks bled into one another as I became ensnared in an obsessive routine. I trained my eyes on her every move, a hawk circling over its prey. It was excruciating to witness the casualness of her interactions with Richard, the way she laughed unapologetically as though the closeness they shared was perfectly benign. I would bury myself in work during the day, but at night, I'd replay the recordings I had obtained, desperately seeking the warmth of her laughter, the laughter she once lavished upon me, now tainted by an insidious secret. I would sit in the dull glow of my laptop screen, poring over the evidence that illuminated all the spaces where I'd felt blindsided. I understood the seductive pull of that which had been hidden, the intimacy she had shared with someone else. Each laugh, each exchange, became a cold knife twisting in my gut. I howled as I watched her smile at Richard, drawn to his charm in ways that sent shards of ice coursing through my veins. This was my life, my love laid bare, and all I could do was watch as someone else soaked it all in. The transformation I underwent was profound. Suddenly, I realized that I was no pawn in her game. I was neither the echo of her ridicule nor the shadow of her deceitful laughter. With every revelation, every confirmation of betrayal, I began to reclaim my sense of worth, carrying my heart in one hand and the damning evidence in the other. No longer would I succumb to a cycle of self-doubt and humiliation. No longer would I allow her to assume the role of innocent while I played the fool. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, and the vividness of my emotions gripped me tightly. I could feel my pulse quickening, the rhythm matching the internal drumroll of confrontation. I had become a man forged from rage and sorrow, braced for the inevitable reckoning that lay before me. I cherished this newfound strength like a talisman against the despair that had threatened to swallow me whole. The moment I had dreaded and yearned for came sooner than I anticipated. One evening, I caught Lily on the phone with Richard, the familiar cadence of her voice reaching my ears like a tendril curling into the hollow chambers of my heart. The way she said his name, so easily, so carelessly, spurred me into movement. Every second that passed felt like an eternity, and I pivoted, holding her gaze as the full weight of my resolve entered the room and eclipsed the cotton candy facade that held our lives together. I know, I said, each word steely and clear. The room fell silent, the chill of recognition rushing in with savage clarity. I know everything. She stuttered as her lips parted, the surprise playing across her features like a cartoonish rendering of guilt. What are you talking about? Lily feigned innocence, but the golden light of betrayal was emblazoned in her wide-open eyes. I stepped closer, breathing in the fragrance I was used to associating with love. Her shampoo mingled with the vanilla scent of our home, yet now it turned rancid with the weight of truth. Don't play games with me. I've seen your messages, and I've heard you with him. I know the truth of what's been happening. Her facade crumbled, and I watched as fear trickled into her expression, ushering in uncertainty. The cool poise she carried into the room began to falter. David, please, spare me the explanations. The anger erupted from my core, raw and unfiltered. I could feel the other emotions stirring beneath it, sadness, confusion, betrayal, but I wrestled with them, fighting to keep my focus tethered to the present. This isn't simply a misunderstanding. Either you value what we had enough to fight for, or you don't. All I wanted, a relationship that thrived on trust and honesty, now feels like a cruel joke. The weight of the words hung between us, heavy with gravity. She blinked, her surprise transforming into anguish as she tried to navigate the wreckage of our shared history. I remained steadfast, pulse racing, heart hardened against the betrayal that had corroded everything I thought I knew. David, you have to understand, she started again, desperation weaving its way through her voice, but I refused to let her mask the truth with empty logic. Understand what? I interrupted, the edge of my tone sharper than I had intended. That I've been reduced to a mere spectator in my own life? How could you look at Richard and then return to me like nothing had happened? For a moment, the air thickened with unspoken revelation, our bodies both tethered to a past that felt more like a ghost haunting the edges of memory. Lily's sorrow mirrored my own, a poignant reminder that love, once radiant, now bore the scars of infidelity. But I was done masking my pain beneath layers of pretense. This was my moment to bare my soul, to lay everything on the line. As I waited for her response, the room felt electrified. The silence stretched taut, each second heartbeat pounding in synchronicity with my growing fear of what lay ahead. Every breath I took was a hostage to the complexity of love and betrayal that bound us, and as I stared into her eyes, I realized something monumental. We were both standing at a crossroads, teetering toward a cliff where only one of us could leap forward. Just then, I understood with unbearable clarity that this confrontation was not merely a trial to endure, but an invitation towards self-discovery. I recognized that whatever occurred in this moment could lead to something richer, a chance for reconciliation or a defining moment where we could sever the bonds of a broken promise. Are you ready to face the truth, Lily? My voice cut through the murky tension like a sudden gust of wind. Because I can't keep living in the shadows of your lies. And as I awaited her reply, The storm that raged within my chest threatened to break free. I knew that her answer might change everything, but I was finally ready to confront the chaos, to step into the light. It was time to seek resolve, to claim my narrative against a backdrop of uncertainty, driven by the not-so-simple drive toward honesty. I had the evidence to confront her and the bravery to stand my ground, and now all I needed was for Lily to choose her path, one that I could no longer walk alongside unless it was forged in sincerity. As the tension grew thick and suffocating, I prepared myself for the cataclysmic showdown I was orchestrating. The heart of my vengeance began to solidify amid intimate dinners with friends, allowing me to shoulder the mantle of the wronged husband. Each laughter-filled moment masked the storm that brewed behind my composed facade, threatening to surface at any moment. The dinner party, set again in our lavish home, loomed as the stage upon which I would unveil Lily's betrayal. The evening arrived, each element meticulously planned to create the perfect setting. The ambient music played softly, mingling with the sounds of chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the comforting aroma of my favorite dish wafting from the kitchen. I felt a potent mix of nerves and exhilaration filling my chest, each heartbeat echoing the memories of joy we once shared in this space. But now, all I could see was the claustrophobic aura of her deceit hovering ominously around us. As the evening progressed and guests mingled over delicious hors d'oeuvres, I maintained my composure, offering a genuine smile even as I watched Lily bask in the attention that had once bolstered me. She laughed brightly, twirling her hair and casting flirtatious glances in Richard's direction, his presence an unwelcome shadow that darkened my thoughts. I clenched my jaw, suppressing the urge to storm across the room, to tear apart the playful banter they shared. It was maddening how she could turn our home into a stage for their mockery of the trust we once held sacred. As I stood there, the anger simmered within me, a tightly coiled spring ready to explode at the slightest touch. Time crawled toward the moment for her toast, a moment I had deliberately manipulated, knowing full well how it would culminate. A gleam of anticipation shone in her eyes as she poured herself a fresh glass of wine and raised it as guests began to quiet down, waiting for her words. To love, laughter, and the beauty of honesty, she declared, voice ringing with a false warmth. It was in that instant I stood, heart pounding and my voice steady, as I intercepted her with an icy smile. Actually, Lily, I interrupted, every eye in the room snapping toward me. Tonight is not only about love. Silence enveloped us, punctuated only by the clinking of ice and glasses and the nervous shifting of feet. I felt the collective breath of the guests, a tension thickening the air. It's about the truth. With deliberate precision, I brought forth the USB to drive, an artifact of shattered trust, my hand steady even as my heart raced. The face of the woman I loved the most was now stripped of her facade, revealing the guilt that lay beneath. I clicked the device and the screen flickered to life, illuminating the evidence I had amassed. The intimate exchanges, the stolen glances, the laughter that once felt like a gentle embrace now coldly weaponized against me. Whispers erupted around the room, expressions of disbelief painting their faces in shades of confusion and shock. Lily's expression shifted dramatically, the vivacious spirit that had dazzled the attendees replaced by a ghostly pallor. Every laugh that had cascaded from her lips became a taunt, an echo of the betrayal that lay buried underneath our shared history. The familiar warmth of love I had thought I held on to crumbled like the very foundation of our marriage. I could see fear slinking into her gaze, mingling with the desperation as she sought to find her footing in a reality that had spiraled out of her control. David, she stammered, but my resolve solidified like iron, drowning out her insistent pleas. This moment felt like a Donald Trump earthquake within the storm of emotional chaos, breaking a barrier that had long held her encased in a cocoon of avoidance and deceit. Spare me the explanations, I retorted sharply, the raw thrum of anger erupting from my core. This isn't a misunderstanding. Everything we built is nothing more than a fragile illusion, a game where I was the fool. My voice cut through the suffocating atmosphere, rising with strength I hadn't realized I could muster. The truth hung heavily between us, layered with resentment, hurt, and disillusionment. I could almost see the walls of our shared life cracking under the weight of my revelations, their marbled surface showing the ugly scars of our discord. Guests fidgeted, their expressions caught somewhere between morbid curiosity and sympathy. Yet I couldn't care less about the spectators now. The only thing that mattered was the woman who had betrayed me standing frozen in front of me. Do you have any idea how easy it was for you to tear down everything we had? I pressed, stepping closer, the air thickening with unspoken tension. You allowed yourself to be taken in by the charm of someone else while I was fighting with everything in me to hold our marriage together. Did you think I wouldn't notice? The betrayal tasted bitter on my tongue, coiling tightly within my chest, but I wasn't prepared to back down. I drew strength from the frail facade she had thrown around us, a reminder that we were both at a crossroads, teetering on the precipice of a decision that would redefine whether our relationship could rise from this wreckage or fall apart entirely. Are you truly ready to face the truth? I challenged, expecting her response to lead us somewhere profound, somewhere that might touch upon the scars in our shared past, that might hold a flicker of hope. Instead, her initial shock morphed into something deeper, something almost fragile. As she opened her mouth to speak, I felt time suspend, the heavy silence shattered only by the din of the guests milling around us, oblivious to the storm raging just a few feet away. David, I was wrong. I never wanted to hurt you," she began. But I could feel the words teeter, choked by the weight of her guilt. My heart ached yet throbbed with a new kind of clarity. It was the clarity of finally realizing that her apologies were nothing more than a salve for her guilt, an attempt to mend the wreckage without genuinely confronting the pieces of what had transpired. "Wanting and doing are very different things, Lily," I replied, edged with frustration but rooted deeply in my desire for honest revelation. "You made choices that drove a wedge between us, choices that shattered the trust we once shared. I can't just pretend this didn't happen." With those words, I recognized the flicker of courage igniting in my chest. Though uncertainty lurked, a quiet strength underpinned my resolve. At that moment, something shifted within me. I wasn't just confronting her. I was reclaiming my identity, shedding the skin of a victim and stepping into a space of accountability for my own heart. "You need to decide what you want, Lily, whether to reclaim this or let it go." Her eyes narrowed, and as the emotions danced in her pupils, I could see her grappling with a mixture of regret and a hint of determination. Whatever happened next would mold the contours of our lives, perhaps forever influencing the direction of our futures. And as we remained suspended in that moment, eyes locked, hearts exposed, the battle didn't feel like one of blame or revenge, but rather a necessity for clarity. The air thick with tension buzzed alive, each passing second of breath dipped in fear and honest reckoning. I had laid my cards on the table, and now it was time for Lily to reveal her hand. We were poised at a precipice, waiting for the next cascade to define whether we would emerge from this heartbreak stronger together or severed at the seams, forever altered by the choices we made. "Actually, Lily," I interrupted, every eye in the room snapping toward me. "Tonight is not only about love." Silence enveloped us, punctuated only by the clinking of ice and glasses and the nervous shifting of feet. I felt the collective breath of the guests, a tension thickening the air. "It's about the truth." With deliberate precision, I brought forth the USB to drive, an artifact of shattered trust, my hand steady even as my heart raced. The face of the woman I loved the most was now stripped of her facade, revealing the guilt that lay beneath. I clicked the device, and the screen flickered to life, illuminating the evidence I had amassed. The intimate exchanges, the stolen glances, the laughter that once felt like a gentle embrace now coldly weaponized against me. Whispers erupted around the room, expressions of disbelief painting their faces in shades of confusion and shock. Lily's expression shifted dramatically, the vivacious spirit that had dazzled the attendees replaced by a ghostly pallor. Every laugh that had cascaded from her lips became a taunt, an echo of the betrayal that lay buried underneath our shared history. The familiar warmth of love I had thought I held on to crumbled like the very foundation of our marriage. I could see fear slinking into her gaze, mingling with the desperation as she sought to find her footing in a reality that had spiraled out of her control. David, she stammered, but my resolve solidified like iron, drowning out her insistent pleas. This moment felt like a Donald Trump earthquake within the storm of emotional chaos, breaking a barrier that had long held her encased in a cocoon of avoidance and deceit. "Spare me the explanations," I retorted sharply, the raw thrum of anger erupting from my core. "This isn't a misunderstanding. Everything we built is nothing more than a fragile illusion, a game where I was the fool." My voice cut through the suffocating atmosphere, rising with strength I hadn't realized I could muster. The truth hung heavily between us, layered with resentment, hurt, and disillusionment. I could almost see the walls of our shared life cracking under the weight of my revelations, their marbled surface showing the ugly scars of our discord. Guests fidgeted, their expressions caught somewhere between morbid curiosity and sympathy. Yet I couldn't care less about the spectators now. The only thing that mattered was the woman who had betrayed me standing frozen in front of me. Do you have any idea how easy it was for you to tear down everything we had? I pressed, stepping closer, the air thickening with unspoken tension. You allowed yourself to be taken in by the charm of someone else while I was fighting with everything in me to hold our marriage together. Did you think I wouldn't notice? The betrayal tasted bitter on my tongue, coiling tightly within my chest, but I wasn't prepared to back down. I drew strength from the frail facade she had thrown around us, a reminder that we were both at a crossroads, teetering on the precipice of a decision that would redefine whether our relationship could rise from this wreckage or fall apart entirely. Are you truly ready to face the truth? I challenged, expecting her response to lead us somewhere profound, somewhere that might touch upon the scars in our shared past, that might hold a flicker of hope. Instead, her initial shock morphed into something deeper, something almost fragile. As she opened her mouth to speak, I felt time suspend, the heavy silence shattered only by the din of the guests milling around us, oblivious to the storm raging just a few feet away. David, I was wrong. I never wanted to hurt you," she began. But I could feel the words teeter, choked by the weight of her guilt. My heart ached yet throbbed with a new kind of clarity. It was the clarity of finally realizing that her apologies were nothing more than a salve for her guilt, an attempt to mend the wreckage without genuinely confronting the pieces of what had transpired. "Wanting and doing are very different things, Lily," I replied, edged with frustration but rooted deeply in my desire for honest revelation. "You made choices that drove a wedge between us, choices that shattered the trust we once shared. I can't just pretend this didn't happen." With those words, I recognized the flicker of courage igniting in my chest. Though uncertainty lurked, a quiet strength underpinned my resolve. At that moment, something shifted within me. I wasn't just confronting her. I was reclaiming my identity, shedding the skin of a victim and stepping into a space of accountability for my own heart. "You need to decide what you want, Lily, whether to reclaim this or let it go." Her eyes narrowed, and as the emotions danced in her pupils, I could see her grappling with a mixture of regret and a hint of determination. Whatever happened next would mold the contours of our lives, perhaps forever influencing the direction of our futures. Yet, in that charged air, I couldn't help but notice how the other guests fell into an unbearable silence, their anxious eyes darting between us like moths caught in a flame, momentarily drawn and yet too frightened to touch. I breathed deeply, the rancid taste of bitter emotion swirling like a tempest in my chest, prodding me to press further. "Lily," I said, my voice softer now, almost pleading again, searching for the remnants of the love woven into our marriage. "Look around. Do you see them?" I gestured broadly, encompassing their shared friends, the guests who had once celebrated our love. "They deserve to know the truth just as much as I do. Our lives have intertwined so deeply that we can no longer hide behind the veneer of normalcy." She squirmed, glancing at our friends, all of whom wore expressions painted with disbelief and pity. In that fleeting moment, I saw a flicker in her eyes, a crisis of conscience battling with the instinct to deny, to pretend everything would be okay. I had once thought love offered safety and instinctive support. Tonight, it did the opposite. Love made its absence painfully clear, and in front of a room full of witnesses, my heart railed against the very notion of forgiveness being automatically handed out. "This isn't just about us anymore, Lily." I pressed on, fueled by the spiraling courage ignited within. "The choices we make affect everyone around us. Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" My voice cracked softly at the end, and for a moment, just one brief second, I glimpsed a flicker of recognition in her downturned gaze. In that instant, she was no longer the carefree woman who had so effortlessly danced through our lives. She stood broken before me, stripped of her bravado. A shard of sadness tangled with the anger, a painful reminder of what we could have been if only honesty hadn't become a foreign language in our conversations. "I didn't mean to," she faltered, grasping at the fragments of her words as if they held the power to mend what was irrevocably broken. "I thought it would. It didn't mean anything." Her voice trembled, a desperate plea wrapped in the agony of nervous denial. Without thinking, I took her hands, the warmth of her palms a memory against my fingers growing colder. "It has to mean something, Lily," I implored more firmly, flexing against the soft pulse of regret flooding my chest. "It has to matter. Otherwise, we've lost everything. Our love, our trust. We only drag each other further into despair." Tears formed in her eyes, and watching them spill over from the well of disgrace threatened to consume my heart all over again. For a moment, we stood there, two people engulfed by the debris of shared dreams, encased in the reality of choices made. I was releasing fragments of my grief, and in that exchange, I hoped against hope that she would choose to feel her own guilt as deeply as I had felt it. The tension hung heavier than the air in the room, twisting the remaining guests into silent observers of our dark ballet. Somewhere beyond the horizon of this emotional battlefield lay reconciliation, or perhaps it was simply the path to our separate futures. What lay ahead remained tangled in uncertainty, yet amidst the turmoil, I felt my resolve harden. I had laid my cards on the table. Now it was her turn. The moment stretched, a taut strand trembling between clarity and confusion as I braced myself, waiting for Lily to summon the strength to respond, to reveal her heart in all its vulnerability. She drew a shaky breath, her shoulders trembling under the weight of what had passed. But the answer to my unsaid question lingered, just out of reach, an invitation for us both to meet in the depths of realization or to walk away forever changed. Lily's world crumbled in an instant, the elegant dinner party now married to a haunting silence that rippled through the gathered crowd. The moments following my confession felt surreal, as if a dark cloud had settled, casting everything in a somber shade of reality. The echo of my words reverberated against the pristine walls, a cruel reminder of the life we had built that now lay in ruins. Gone were the lively conversations about our future, the dreams knit together in laughter. In their place lingered the bitter taste of betrayal. Her expression shifted dramatically, and I could see the vibrant woman who once captivated everyone slowly being replaced by a person shrouded in fear and desperation. The laughter that had cascaded from her lips moments ago now felt like daggers buried deep within me. David, she stammered, struggling to find her footing amidst the gravitational pull of the truth. My heart twisted painfully. I wanted her to feel just as I did, to understand the deep fissure that had been carved into my soul. Spare me the explanations, I retorted sharply, the chorus of gasps filling the room urging me into a relentless swell of anger and hurt. This isn't a misunderstanding. Everything we built is nothing but a fragile illusion, a game where I was the fool. The power in my voice shocked even me. After all this time spent feeling small, I was reclaiming myself in a way I had never thought possible. In this midst of chaos, I observed the flurry of emotions unfolding across the faces of our once united friends. They flinched, every whispered conversation morphing into an anxious murmur. I noticed Paul, one of my oldest pals, his eyes darting between us, a mixture of disbelief and sympathy plastered across his face. In that moment, it became apparent that I was no longer just confronting Lily. I was unearthing an intricate web of lies that span across our lives. Do you have any idea how easy it was for you to tear down everything we had? I pressed, stepping closer, the air thickening with unspoken tension. You allowed yourself to be taken in by the charm of someone else while I was fighting with everything in me to hold our marriage together. Did you think I wouldn't notice? It was as if I had become a spectator of my own heartache, witnessing Lily's exquisite unraveling, her skills at eloquence exchanged for a stammering plea for empathy. The betrayal tasted bitter on my tongue, coiling tightly within my chest, but I wasn't prepared to back down. I drew strength from the frail facade she had thrown around us, a reminder that we were both at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of a decision that would redefine whether our relationship could rise from this wreckage or fall apart entirely. Are you truly ready to face the truth? I challenged, expecting her response to lead us somewhere profound. It seemed I was searching for clarity amidst the shards of our past, hoping for the flicker of hope to arise from the rubble. Her initial shock morphed painfully into something I had never desired to witness, a vulnerability that mingled with desperation. David, I was wrong. I never wanted to hurt you, she began, but the authenticity of her remorse felt hesitant, as if she were grasping for words without fully understanding their weight. I was met with a familiar surge of conflict. Regret had a way of entangling itself with the essence of love, and for a fleeting moment, I felt the tendrils of my own anger begin to soften. Wanting and doing are very different things, Lily, I replied, edged with frustration yet rooted in the desire to understand. You made choices that drove a wedge between us, choices that shattered the trust we once shared. I could see her tremble under the rawness of my words, the truth confronting her like a tidal wave. The truth hung heavily between us, layered with resentment, hurt, and disillusionment. I could almost see the walls of our shared life cracking under the weight of my revelations, their marbled surface showing the ugly scars of our discord. You need to decide what you want, Lily, whether to reclaim this or let it go. My heart ached with the reality of it all. I wanted her to choose me the way I had chosen her, even if that love felt like a distant memory. Tears formed in her eyes, But unlike the usual watery expressions of love, these bore the weight of sorrow and guilt. Watching them spill over threatened to consume my heart all over again. For a moment, we stood there, two people engulfed by the debris of shared dreams, encased in the reality of choices made. As I searched her face for any semblance of the woman I had married, I felt the uncertainty of our future loom just beyond our reach. But I was more than angry. I was emboldened by the force of honesty, a fire ignited within that propelled me forth to confront her in the shadow cast across our dreams. "It has to mean something, Lily," I implored, fiercely seeking honesty. I gripped her hands, attempting to bridge the chasm that separated us, only to find that warmth now felt foreign against my rapidly coldening heart. "Otherwise, we've lost everything. Our love, our trust. We can't drag each other further into despair." I longed to see her transform from this moment on. My heart shouted for her to process her own guilt and emerge as someone willing to acknowledge the wreckage she had caused. For too long, I had played the role of the scapegoat, putting aside my own well-being for her whims. I deserved to have someone fight for me, even if I was horrified to think I now had to demand that fight. The tension hung heavier than ever, twisting our remaining friends into silent observers of our dark ballet. The uneasy atmosphere felt like a carefully balanced tension rope, each heartbeat pushing us closer to a decision neither of us fully understood. "This isn't just about us anymore, Lily," I pressed, reliving the fragility of every moment lost to the darkness. "The choices we make affect everyone around us. Do you understand the consequences of your actions?" The silence deepened, allowing both desperation and rage to mingle in the charged air. There was an intensity blossoming around us. Could it be our last stand, the moment to reclaim ourselves or watch everything disintegrate? I acutely felt the shifting energies being played out like drum beats, synchronizing with the urgency of her shared past. As I observed Lily, anguish twisted her features. She was processing something monumental. She took a shaky breath, and for a fleeting moment, I believed there might be hope relinquished in the grasp of utter chaos. "David, I didn't mean to," she faltered, her expression tumbling through layers of despair and regret. I thought, it didn't mean anything. At that moment, I could sense the colors of our decade merging into something greater than betrayal itself, a testament to our shared journey, however flawed. The shattered dreams that washed over us were hidden beneath the wreckage, coiled around what could have been if only we had heeded the warning signs. "Lily," I asked tenderly, "look around. Do you see them?" I gestured broadly, encompassing our friends, those who had once celebrated our love. "They deserve to know the truth just as much as I do. Our lives have intertwined so deeply that we can no longer hide behind the veneer of normalcy." She squirmed, glancing at our friends, every pair of eyes riveted on the scene unfolding before them. The weight of her guilt pulled her further into the abyss. My heart ached, not just for myself, but for us both, knowing how easily we could frame this moment as the tragic denouement to our shared story. "This isn't just about how you feel," I continued, each word stitching tighter around my resolve. "It's about the heart we built together. Can you transcend the hurt and look beyond your actions into what we might still salvage?" I longed for her to disentangle herself from the lies and rediscover the love that had once bound us. Lily's body language softened, yet I could see the internal battle raging within her. She was grappling with the reality of our love interwoven with betrayal, my desperation singing quietly against the cacophonous silence. Finally, she raised her gaze, her eyes shimmering with a flicker of honesty. There stood the remnants of a spirit once vibrant and passionate, now tainted with feelings of despair enveloping her every breath. "I'll do anything to make this right," she murmured, her voice barely breaking through the blanket of silence. "David, I'm sorry." As the words hung in the air like mist, tangible yet elusive, I felt my heart twist with a complex concoction of anger, hope, and an inexplicable yearning for reconciliation. Yet, while I could sense sparks of sincerity toward the flickering flame of redemption, part of me still stood guarded, a shield built from the wreckage of shattered trust. What lay ahead remained tangled in uncertainty, yet amidst the tumultuous tides of humanity, I felt the flicker of hope battling against despair. I had laid my cards on the table. Now it was her turn. Would she choose to rise with me from the ashes we had ignited, or would we both turn and walk away, forever altered by the choices we couldn't take back? The critical moments flowed silently past us, each heartbeat choreographing the dance of potential futures, a breath away from irrevocable change. I searched her face for clarity, for a resolve that might signal a shift from guilt to redemption. But all I found was the depth of her remorse, an ocean of regrets that threatened to engulf us whole. The lingering pain of her betrayal still echoed in my heart, yet here was a chance, fragile though it may be, to reshape the narrative that had bound us for so long. The idea buzzed in my ears, both intoxicating and terrifying, yet I was unsure if it was enough to build anew on such shattered foundations. Sorry doesn't fix what's broken, Lily, I said, my voice shaking, maintaining a delicate balance of distance while inviting transformation. Can we speak freely? From the heart. It was an invitation to her, generative breath rather than a destructive pull. I needed to know if she was willing to redefine who we could be beyond the pain of the past. Lily nodded once, a slight yet affirmative gesture. Yes, she whispered, a measure of sincerity creeping into her eyes. I want to try. What does that look like? I asked, feeling as though we were standing at the edge of a cliff, peering into the unknown, a leap of faith ahead of us both. I need to understand how we can rebuild something worthwhile. I don't know, she replied, her voice breaking slightly. But I know that I want to. I want to fight for us, to hold on to what we still have. The way she clasped her hands together tightly reflected the tremors of uncertainty rolling through her. It was raw and unadulterated, reflecting the very real possibility that the journey back to trust would be steep and fraught with difficult choices. I need more than words, I urged, the weight of her earlier actions pressing heavily on my chest. I need to see that you're willing to commit to that fight, even if it means facing the demons we both created. The brutality of it all felt refreshing. It was time to peel the layers back, to confront the reality of our situation with unyielding honesty. With a deep, shaky breath, she braced herself. I will, David. I promise I'll do the work. I know I can't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to demonstrate that you matter more to me than the mistakes I made. That sincerity struck a chord within me, a note I hadn't anticipated, and for a fleeting moment, that flicker of hope grew. It intermingled with the remnants of anguish and the knowledge that healing rarely mirrored our expectations. Could we truly confront our past while paving a path forward? It felt like a pipe dream, yet distressingly possible. What do you need from me? She asked finally, her voice carrying a tremor of vulnerability. I sensed a shift in her tone, a yearning for connection that mirrored my own desire to reclaim what was lost. I need you to be brave, I said softly, brave enough to become a better version of yourself. Your honesty has to be unwavering. I want to trust again, not just you but the memory of who we were before everything fell apart. Use this crossed road as an opportunity to create something new and valiant. She nodded, her gaze steadying on mine, the sincerity etched on her face as though she were absorbing every word, letting it sink into her core. I will, I promise. I'll do whatever it takes. The gravity of her statement wrapped around us, an echo reverberating through our turbulent landscape. But even as her promise hung sweetly in the air, I still felt the undercurrent of doubt tangle within me, a raw split between desire and skepticism, a thread that had long woven our identities into one chaotic tapestry. A moment of silence passed, each tick of time amplifying the tension. The crowd around us, once vibrant and supportive, had retreated to blankness, still witnesses to our intimate unraveling. Their hushed whispers felt like an unwelcome spotlight as the enormity of our conversation cast shadows over their expectations. Will our friends understand this journey? Will they support it? I pondered quietly, feeling the weight of outside judgment threatening to drown us as well. We had shared our lives intertwined with theirs. Perhaps their involvement could be the salve to begin healing this break. Lily slid her hand into mine, her warmth both reassuring and complex. Let's face them together. We owe them honesty too, she replied, an ounce of determination creeping back into her voice. We've always stood in front of the world as a unit. We owe it to them to be united now, even amidst chaos. Her words struck true. We needed to confront not just each other, but the narrative we had spun within our community. Seeking their acceptance felt essential, like the embrace of a truth that had the power to heal beyond our personal wounds. Yet even in that moment of shared zeal, I recalled the razor edge of trust, bleeding through an intricate labyrinth I wasn't sure we could navigate. Sure, we were at the precipice of something new, but could we withstand the storm brewing at our heels? I want to believe you, Lily, I admitted, my heart heavy with the repercussions of potential outcomes. But I also need to protect myself. What we can rebuild has to emerge gradually, right? I mean, trust is earned, not given freely. I understand, she murmured, empathy glimmering in her eyes. Let's take it one day at a time. All I ask is for the chance to prove myself. A tentative promise hung between us while outside. The city shimmered under the twilight, a canvas filled with hopes and dreams not yet expressed, vibrant and ready for exploration. This was only the beginning of our work, not just for ourselves, but for the life ahead. And though uncertainty loomed like a storm cloud, we stood resolute at the forefront, holding on to a flicker of possibility, ready to embrace the journey, however tangled it may be. What unfolded next would be a test of our will and our commitment, a path laden with imperfections that could barely contain the complexities of human emotion. But at that moment, with our paths intertwined, I chose to look forward, choosing hope over despair, the chance for redemption instead of a painful farewell. Slowly, the shattered remnants of my past began to coalesce into something breathtaking, a narrative of strength, resilience, and redirection toward the future. The specter of Lily lingered, but it was a ghost that could no longer choke my spirit. I had emerged from the shadows she cast, grasping the nuances of love and their flawed complexity. The walls of our shared home echoed only with memories of regret and the scent of myriad dreams left unfulfilled. With each passing day, the dawning realization that life was a canvas for new beginnings became clearer, urging me forward. The vibrancy of my new apartment enveloped me, its dark walls offering a blank slate brimming with choices and possibilities. I embraced who I had become, no longer a victim of betrayal, but an independent silhouette rising against a skyline of freedom. This metamorphosis filled me with a sense of empowerment as I settled into a life unshackled by the chains of infidelity. I understood that true victory lay beyond societal measures of triumph. It resided in the quietude of self-acceptance, in my will to turn pain into purpose, a testament to the strength of the human spirit amid the tides of transformation and renewal. Yet, despite my progress, I couldn't shake the specter of Lily from the depths of my mind. I often found myself standing at my living room window, staring out at the city below, its frenetic energy mirroring the turmoil within me. I remembered moments we had shared in that very space. The laughter that had once filled it seemed like a distant echo now. I could almost sense her presence, the joy of simpler times laced with the bitterness of betrayal. What would it take for me to completely disengage from that chapter of my life? A part of me still felt tethered to the love I had for her, that stubborn flame flickering in my heart even as scars ran deep. It was maddening, this push and pull between healing and hurt. I concluded that the ghosts of our history would take time to quiet. I needed to forge ahead, slowly, deliberately, with every step meant to reclaim my identity. I picked up the paintbrush I had left untouched since the move, a mere hobby turned relic of a happier time. I carefully squeezed the rich hues from the tubes onto a palette, vowing to create art anew, to channel my feelings onto that blank canvas sprawling before me. Each stroke felt cathartic, a release of pent-up emotion as color splashed vibrantly against the stark white. It was grounding in a way that only art could be. I could control the narrative, bend and twist it to suit my will. Alone in the comforting cocoon of my thoughts, I painted the skyline, only partially glazed over with clouds, the sun determined to break through. Then, inevitably, images of Lily infiltrated my mind once more, her laughter washing over me like warm sunlight, the dynamic fervor she once inspired. I winced, battling the memories that stirred uninvited. Without conscious effort, I painted her silhouette against the backdrop of that same skyline, a brilliant sun setting behind her, shadows long and distorted, echoing my conflicted emotions. I was confronting the complexities of our love, a blend of light and shadow wrapped tightly within. Do you even see your own reflection? I taunted myself quietly, mentally wrestling over the scars left in the wake of betrayal. Would I ever truly understand the absolution of her departure? Doubt clutched at my heart, and I fought to breathe as the familiar ache materialized, a reminder of the chaos she had brought into our lives. Yet, with each stroke, I claimed my power in my voice. The words beat against my chest like a drum, louder and louder. I was safe. I could stand alone. With a final brushstroke, I stepped back, my breath hitching in my throat. The painting stood vividly alive, an embodiment of my journey, raw, unyielding, and transformative. For the first time in a long while, I felt hope radiate within me, casting warmth into the recesses of despair. Perhaps I could create a narrative that was not dictated by betrayal, but instead shaped by choice and calculated intent. Yet outside my sanctuary, reality lurked incessantly. My phone buzzed, jolting me from reverie, a message drawing me back to the land of the living. Heart racing, I glanced at the screen, moments of trepidation flooding my mind. It was a text from Lily. "Can we talk?" It read, a lifeline thrown into the murky waters separating us. I hesitated, feeling the weight of her request draw me in with magnetic force. Was I ready to confront her? To re-engage with a tangled history? The paint on my canvas might have felt like a celebration of liberation, but this was a different arena altogether. No, I typed back, feeling the urge to maintain distance yet yearning for clarity. The simple word held so much uncertainty, a question without resolution. I need to explain. I can't leave things like this. Please. Her response was immediate, almost desperate. As I leaned against the wall, I considered the remnants of our past flooding back. All the pain, the love, the confusion. It had coalesced into a haphazard tapestry I couldn't bear to unravel, yet was powerless to ignore. When had we drifted so far apart? Had we ever really been as united as we believed? Or had we merely worn the facade of lovers while festering resentment brewed beneath the surface? It was easier to hate, easier to bury the memories, yet painful as it might be, love was still present, wrapped in the complexities I feared might bind me once more. Part of me itched to respond with black and white ease, cutting her off, asserting my independence. But there was that flickering urgency, an urge rooted within our history and intertwined destinies. I took a breath, the turmoil turbulent yet familiar. Okay, I'll meet you, I finally typed, my finger trembling slightly above the screen before hitting send. This intersection of past and future, tethered to both regret and a tenuous hope of resolution, promised confrontation, the very thing I now dreaded yet welcomed. In that instant, I felt as though I was standing at yet another precipice, one with boundless possibilities stretching before me, ready to embrace what lay ahead.